The first thing I would say is make sure that you've got a clean top, especially if you've got pets. I always recommend putting a clean top on just to make sure. Then you want your molds, some nail varnish remover, your catalyst, your syringe, obviously your resin. I'm using polyester clear cast resin here. And now a quick change. And now we start with the respirator. Resin is really toxic, so make sure that your room is well ventilated and that you wear one of these at all times. You should also really wear gloves while you're doing resin, but yeah, I generally don't, just because I find it gets in the way. So now with your measuring cup, you want to measure out how much resin that you want. Now the best way to know how much you want is actually to pre-measure your molds with water beforehand. But I generally know how much I'm using here. So as you can see me pouring, I'm going to be pouring 100 milliliters into this cup. And the catalyst that I'm using, basically you can then just use like 1 ml of catalyst, but to make sure that it casts quickly and without any lines or problems, I always double the catalyst, so that makes it form a lot quicker. So I'm putting in 2 millimeters to the 100 millimeters. So if you were pouring 200 millimeters of resin, you would then use 4 ml of the catalyst. So you just pop it in, and then what you want to do is then start stirring. So I generally stir 1 to 2 minutes. And you can either go fast or slow, but you will see bubbles form. Now I've speeded that up there, but I did stir for maybe about 2 minutes. That's generally when a lot of fumes will come off. So now I'm taking a cotton pad and the acetone, so basically nail varnish remover, and I'm just sweeping around. Going to sweep around the molds just to make sure there's no dust, any remnants of any resin from previous molds. I'm just giving that a good clean out. And you'll be able to use the mold straight away, but you do obviously want to make sure it's dry and there's not, you know, any sort of nail polish remover like stuck in there. I'm just cleaning that one out as well. That one just had a little bit more resin from a previous mold, and that's why you need to wear gloves, guys, because yeah, I got some resin on my finger there. I'm just going to do the third one while it's out. I don't actually really need to use this third one today, but I'm just going back because I've just spotted a little hair in there. And again, just getting that off my fingers. Now I'm just inspecting that, and you can actually see I've still got some cotton wool there on my finger. So again, this is what's important. So again, you need some toothpicks, because that's going to help you just get any tiny hairs and any dirt out of the mold, but also super important for when you start pouring your resin. If there's any air bubbles, it means you can pop them. And I'm just not quite satisfied with that one, so I'm just giving them a clean again. My little beady eyes. I've been caught out with this too many times, you know, with hairs and dust and previous maybe bits of resin that I haven't noticed, and then I've done a beautiful mold and it's been uneven. So yeah, I just like to make sure that they're like really spick and span. These molds have been stored for quite some time, so, and this one just had a bit at the bottom that I just could not get out, so I poured it in, and then just to make sure I got it straight out. So that resin has now been standing for a while, so that will get rid of some of the bubbles, the air bubbles. And now what I'm doing is I'm basically just layering the sides of the mold. This will give you a clearer finish. Some of the first pyramids I didn't use 2% catalyst. I maybe only used 1, and the heat in the room wasn't very good, and because it wasn't curing at a fast rate, I had ended up with lines on the outside of my pyramid, so they have to be re-dipped, which, you know, can just be a bit of a pain. So if you just line the mold and just put a little bit of resin in the bottom, and then move it around, this will just give you a much more even finish to you know, whatever kind of piece that you're doing. And I'm just using the cocktail stick just to bring right up to the edges, just so it's nice and even. And again, while I'm doing all this, this is going to be helping get the air bubbles out of the resin as well. So I always pour my resin first before I put any pieces in, because here I'm using a quartz crystal. If I put that quartz crystal in and then put in the resin, then there would be air bubbles. So this is me, I've been out mountain biking, hence clothes, and I'm just now getting ready to put in my second layer. So this is maybe about an hour and a half, 2 hours later, and the resin with the piece of crystal in it it's a little bit tacky, but it's firm. So I'm just now going to add my second layer, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put the resin in first. As you can see, I'm just using the cocktail stick just to check if that's hard. I'm going to put the resin in first, and then I'm going to put the crystal chips in. And the reason for that is to try and prevent as many air bubbles as possible. And what you'll also see me doing after I put in the crystal chips is I move them around with a cocktail stick, and that stops them from sticking to the side, which again can mark the outside of your mold. So I'm just adding in some chips now. This is green aventurine. Is that how you pronounce it? Maybe not. And I'm just using that cocktail stick just to... there's just a bit of dust there. So I'm just moving them around just to get rid of any air bubbles and just to make sure that they're not really, you know, stuck to the outside. Also, this gives you the opportunity just to make them a bit more even if they're not evenly placed. So just filling in some gaps now. You can see on the left hand side of the screen, this is a pyramid that I've already done, so that's actually going to be ready to demold the day after. I'll show you how to do that as well, because I made a few mistakes in the past doing that by not using vinyl gloves. The resin will still be quite soft when you take it out, so it's very easy to mark with your fingerprints. And I've just got some resin left over that I'm making. I'm actually making a skull for myself, so that just gets popped in there. I knew I was going to be making that, but that's the importance of you know, of knowing how much resin that you need, because then you don't waste any. I'm just adding some quartz chips to my skull. This skull is going to be called Charlie. And he's going to be a mixture of quartz chips, a large piece of quartz that's programmed for myself, and some labradite. And then I'm going to use some coils in there as well. So this is now, I'm adding the metal. So I'm using titanium here. And again, just mixing up my resin. You can see the air bubbles actually in there, but those, you know, a lot of the air bubbles will actually level out. It's only when you have put in a crystal, pour in the resin, and then an air bubble can sometimes form. So a lot of the air bubbles will kind of self-level, and you know, if you watch the resin, you actually see them kind of popping. And now I'm just, again, with a cocktail stick, just moving the titanium swarf just away from the sides. You don't have the sides, just have a really nice clean shiny outside. And of course, again, this will just help any air bubbles come to the surface. So this is the unmolding of the other pyramid. So what I've got here is some silicone lining. It's really important when you unmold your pieces not to put them on an uneven surface, or not a silicone mat, because it, like I said before, they're still very, very soft, so it will mark them. So I'm just pulling it out from each side. This is actually a redip that I've done, so that's why you can see parts on the edges. And then I'm really trying not to touch the piece. This is what I always try and do. I just try not to touch it, leave it on the silicone mat, and then just leave it to cure in a warm room.